Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Season 2 of Clinically Correlate. Our very first guest is very, very special to us. We have our very own program director, Dr. Mary Scanlon, with us today, who has generously accepted our offer to be the first guest. This will be a very interesting deep dive into Mary's extensive experience with the program and seeing how Penn Radiology and the overall radiology educational landscape has evolved over the years. We'll also try to learn a little bit about all of us in this podcast, okay? So right off the bat, we want to start off with some fun questions, if that is okay.
Okay, I'm ready for fun.
Yeah, and to make things fair, we'll also answer the question.
Okay.
Okay. What is your favorite food?
Fried chicken.
Oh, okay. For me, cheesecake.
Pizza. Always.
Thin crust or deep?
Thin. Deep
okay.
Deep dish is just too much. Like you have one slice and like you got to sleep for a couple hours.
There was a Jon Stewart episode where he made fun of deep dish pizza, like from Chicago. He kind of equated them to like casseroles. It was like way back.
Very accurate.
Oh, favorite dessert?
Well, for me, it's key lime pie. The whole family always knows whatever there's key lime pie on the menu, I'm getting it.
Oh, wow. I already said cheesecake, so cheesecake it is.
I'll take cheesecake as well.
All right, now a spicy one, a favorite drink.
Oh, that's easy. Cosmopolitan.
For me, Bloody Mary.
I like beer. I don't deviate.
But is it Bloody Mary spicy or not?
Spicy, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
And what condiments do you put in it? Shrimp or olives or?
I think just go with the celery, keep it basic.
Okay.
I never had shrimp, yeah, I guess. Your favorite vacation destination?
Let's see, I went down to Bonita Springs a lot with the family on the west coast of Florida and rented some houses right on the beach, and those sunsets were fabulous, and just, so that's what I have very fond memories of that.
It's kind of escaping the cold and then
Yes.
Yeah, nice. All right, you go, Vedant. I have to think.
Cape Town, South Africa. Spent 6 months there, and it's like, you got the mountains, you got the beach. It's a beautiful city. So love spending my time.
Nice. So I did a year abroad in London. I mean, it's not really a vacation destination, but I feel like kind of just living there and kind of integrating myself into kind of the population was a lot of fun. I did it in my third year of undergraduate.
So we'll start off and ask the general question that we ask everybody.
Okay.
Why did you choose medicine and why did you decide to pursue diagnostic radiology?
All right, good question. All right, I'm prepared. All right.
We gave you the questions beforehand.
That's right, as I asked. Thank you very much. So let's see. I was always drawn to the sciences in high school, and so I was a bio major at Villanova, and I really enjoyed that. I love biochemistry. Like my favorite test was like a blue book of what happens when you have a piece of toast with butter for breakfast, and you had to go through the whole everything. I just love that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, I like the sciences. I decided that I wanted a very safe way to support myself and make sure I would always have a good job, and I could support myself, I could support my family, and medicine seemed like the right choice. I knew I'd be able to always be independent.
That's awesome. And then how did you decide on diagnostic radiology?
Well, let's see. I did not really love my medicine and surgery rotations. I found myself like at the hospital, like so late at night, trying to do these histories and physicals and talking to the patients, and I never got home, and I'm like, and then all the chronic illnesses, I was not a big fan of caring for those patients. I didn't find it as rewarding as radiology.
Understandable. I think that's what draws a lot of us to, right? I think someone had commented that, oftentimes it's the most empathetic people that decide to do radiology or pathology just because there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering that you see on a daily basis, and whether or not you can continue to take that as you progress in your career is just something I think each person has to make an individual decision for. If not radiology, was there anything else that you would consider?
It was always radiology. Yeah, never pathology, God knows. No. Yeah, it was always radiology.
Yeah. And was it always neuroradiology?
Oh, no. That was sort of just, sort of happened.
in terms of, was it like during residency, like
No,
early on?
my chair when I was like a second year resident said, I want you to stay on staff here and I want you to do neuroradiology. And I'm like, okay, I can do this.
That's cool.
So that's how it happened.
Got it. And then at that time, I guess, was like MRI a huge field then, or?
Surely you jest. We're talking 1980, 1984. So no. I remember vividly, like the first article in radiology was like 1982, 1983. And I was sitting at a restaurant in the Italian market, like going through this article and outlining it and trying to teach to myself. And then I taught it to myself, and then I taught it to the program and the attendings at Einstein and my fellow residents. And we had the first 0.15 Technicare resistive magnet in 1985. And even though my boss over there likes to say that Penn had the first magnet, he had the first higher field magnet, right? But we at Einstein had the first resistive magnet that I ran like 6 months before he did.
Wow.
No competition there.
And so I guess fast forward a number of years, why did you decide to become program director?
Well, let's see. I was at a transition point in my career. I had done a lot of things before in terms of, I ran the MRI center at Einstein for many years, and then I left there when there was a change in chairmans, and an opportunity came to be chief of radiology at the VA, and then I was associate chief of staff, and I ran Vision for radiology, and then I got a little bit like jaded about medical management in the VA system, and I was going to switch into private practice, and all the while I was part of Penn, because the search to be chief at the VA was a Penn search, so it was a combined position. And I was going to leave and go out to community, and I accepted that position like January of. And I spent 6 months like relearning everything, because I would have to do cross-sectional imaging from head to toe. So I read like 6 or 7 new textbooks and just got myself all together and was ready to go out. And Nick Bryan called me on the phone, and I was like backing up a horse trailer. It was a day off, backing up a horse trailer, not very well, mind you. And he called and he said, "Do you want the best job in the whole world?" And I said, "Well, what is that, Dr. Bryan?" He said, "Being program director." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can do that. All right, yeah." So that's how I got it. It fell in my lap.
That's awesome. And so do you have any, what are your funniest stories as being program director?
Okay, my funniest story was a resident who actually scheduled himself to be on call here and at CHOP at the same time, and spent all night long running back and forth between the 2 reading rooms, taking care of patients. And so I was not pleased, but Nick Bryan sort of thought it was funny. But that didn't happen again. But that's probably the funniest thing, is him going back and forth all night long.
Was he able to take care of both lists in the end?
Yeah, but we're talking it's lower volumes at that point in time. So yeah, there were some things that fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine like running to the bathroom sometimes nowadays when the list gets crazy. So like between hospitals, that's unimaginable.
At least a 10-minute walk between all of them.
Yes.
So now, how has since you became a program director, how has the training pathway sort of changed in your eyes?
Okay, so lots of regulations, lots of hoops, lots of things. The residencies were not competency-based before like maybe 2010 or so. Yeah, your beloved 6 core competencies. That didn't exist. So then you had to start doing competency-based training. So that was new. And then milestones came into effect, milestones 1.0 and then milestones 2.0. And then we saw the whole pendulum swinging from how the board structure was probably 2012-ish, That was a multiple choice test, for physics probably at the end of your second year, and then a multiple choice, some regular knowledge at the end of your third year, and then the oral exam at the end of your fourth. And then it changed to this core structure, and then things being no longer general, but being really pretty specialized for your certifying exam. And now we're back to the oral exam.
Yeah.
So, if you're in a job long enough, you're going to see things go 360.
So are there any sort of changes, you're being part of the APDR and being in contact with so many different other program directors, are there any particular changes that you're excited about in the radiology education space in the next 10 years?
Well, I'm very excited about going back to an oral exam.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way to go. Mm-hmm. I mean, you sit at I sit and do head and neck, and I don't get A through D as my choice of what this neck mass is, right? And you guys need to be able to, discuss a case and think about it and verbalize a differential, and not just pick out the best choice. So I'm very excited about that.
Nice.
I'm also excited about a universal curriculum that try to, with what you guys are doing and what the APDR is doing in terms of an, interactive, very, multi-pronged, all sorts of resources, because that's how your brains work, right? Is to jump from thing to thing.
Yeah, I think that in my opinion, there's definitely kind of a shift from a more textbook-based resource to more audio-visual-based resource. And that can even be just the PDF version of the whatever resource. Uh-huh. Oftentimes what ends up happening is they have links to various web-based resources, so even that online textbook can kind of integrate to other resources that you have found. And I think most of us coming into radiology nowadays are kind of digitally native, so to speak. So we're kind of growing up with these resources, and we have been using these resources throughout college and medical school. And so it's sort of a natural progression for us into these resources.
And I think it makes sense because radiology at the end of the day is images, and images are digital, and they have been for 20 years. So for the education component to that to kind of catch up is kind of expected, and I think necessary, just because, like we were talking about before, there's a lot of even dynamic stuff during lecture that could be done to really test, a resident and really kind of, get them to understand how to do a search pattern while at lecture and really have a one-to-one correlation to what the real world and practicing radiology is like.
Yep. And we're going to do it together.
We are.
We're going to do it together.
No other way. So, from all your experience, looking back, what do the top 10% of residents do during their time at residency that you're like, that they were just spectacular? And
I group residents into 3 buckets, okay? So there's the ones that suck the life out of me, then there's the one that just come and do their job, and then there's ones that are value-added residents. So it's the value-added residents that, like you guys, right?
Oh.
So no, that's somebody who you see something, we're always in a constant state of trying to make things better and improving, and you see something, well, let's go do it. And people who are willing to do that work. And leave the program, like what I said when the first day you started, like what legacy you're going to leave here.
Yeah.
I know what we're going to do for you, but what legacy? How am I going to remember you, right? How have you made this program a better one? And so that's the resident that I love.
Got it. And so, what have been the most memorable resident-driven changes in your tenure?
Oh, okay. Well, if you look at so milestones, right? Milestones on a shoestring. Go back to that. That was Eric Schmidt, who put that. Eric Schmidt here. He put that together, published it. That was how we first started with how we were trying to, have a electronic learning portfolio and how you could put things in and document stuff. So that was his. Capricorn was Jason Ittrey. And he created one of the first versions of that and Howard Chen. So Howard Chen was another one so it was both of them. It was Howard Chen, but they did. Orion was Ittrey's. They always named it after all this stuff. So a lot of the stuff that you're working with right now were from chief residents or residents who had done stuff.
Amazing. So, as residents, we talked about the top 10, how good residents differentiate themselves. Now, as a program director, right, if there's a new program director coming in or getting in touch with you, what advice would you share with the new program director?
Is that you should always have shades of gray in life, right? Things aren't black and white. I think you always give the resident a break. You always start with, now, what barrier are you facing for why this task didn't get done, right? And I think always starting that way, and how you get your residents to do things, and try to find out why they're not doing things. I think that's, I think asking some important questions at your semi-annuals in terms of getting to know them better, finding out what they like to do. That's that question, like, what is your and, right? And all that came from an ACR meeting about maybe 8-9 years ago on burnout. And so that was all, it was a whole thing there at the ACR meeting about how to decrease burnout. Is to think about what's your 20% and what is your and that you can bring back, that you can do to relax.
Nice. I think along the same vein, I think the reason why a lot of us adore you and respect you is because you are so good at conflict resolution, because it's inevitable that conflicts will arise in residency, whether it's between residents, between resident and faculty, if or like resident and staff, right? What is sort of your approach to this? If I'm a new program director and I come to you with this question, what advice would you give me?
About conflict resolution?
Yeah.
To listen, not talk, and hear both sides of things and try to come up with a middle ground to solve the problem. Because nobody's 100% right and 100% wrong. There's always some shades of gray, and you try to find that and explore it with the two people.
I think it's really helpful piece of advice, just because I think everyone knows program directors, that's probably their hardest job. Right, the conflict.
Or the best job.
The best job. As an outsider, definitely seems like the hardest. As an insider, you can comment on that. Having that perspective and having someone who's done that for 50, 20 years, makes a big difference.
So just going back to the conflict resolution, another thing is that two people and things are happening is just to sort of do a holistic review of that person, like what else is going on in that person's life right now that could be impacting why they did that and why we have this problem between two people. Because nobody comes to this without all this baggage or stuff that's going on in their lives. And so to explore that and try to help understand that and make the other person help understand it, I think is important.
Absolutely. Now we want to move on to some hot topics, as we like to say. So you answered your first question, whether you're in favor of oral boards, and you're like a staunch yes.
Staunch yes.
Now here's an even hotter question. First year, or our intern year, would you be in support of a proposal to kind of either integrate it into radiology residency or kind of get rid of it altogether, or are you kind of in support of the current structure that we have?
Yeah, very interesting. I think, first of all, if we really want to do true competency-based education, it shouldn't be time served. It should be when you reach a competency level, you're done. So there's that. So medical school, I think, could be way shorter. So the other thing is the timing of when you do an internship. Do you do an internship, not an internship, but that's why I really love in your R4 year that we can give you a bunch of months, like you want to go into neuroradiology, give you a bunch of months to go into the neuro ICU or go work with neurosurgery or work with ENT, because then it really makes you a much better neuroradiologist, because you can talk their talk and see how you could be of value to them. So I think doing some blocks then is really important. I would probably still say you should do an internship, and I wouldn't do it all in radiology.
What about kind of integrating the internship throughout residency? So something like anesthesia is doing, where instead of doing a full internship, they are doing 6 months of anesthesia and they're doing 6 months of surgery and 6 months of internal medicine. But the kind of the order that you get those 3 months of medicine and 3 months of surgery can vary throughout the year. So it's not uncommon for some anesthesiology residents in their intern year do a lot of anesthesia rotations and then go into medicine and surgery. Sort of with that initial background of anesthesiology, what do you think of something like that, where we kind of introduce ourselves to diagnostic radiology, see in what capacity we function as residents, and then taking that knowledge onto the floors into kind of surgical teams and kind of helping them out in that regard. That way, we're not necessarily shortening the amount of training; we're still getting the exposure, but we're bringing this sort of specialized knowledge and where we can be a little bit more useful to the team.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying, but I think after just 6 months of being an R1, you're not going to do it.
No, that's fair.
I mean, that's why we've tried all those different things with rad care and having our seniors up there. Actually, in internal medicine, there was a reading room up there.
Yeah.
I think you need to have a little bit more experience. I think doing that as an R4 is really helpful, and I've found the feedback that I've gotten from trainees that have done that, and how like the neurology or the rheumatologist or the orthopedic surgeon just loved having that senior resident there to really help them with stuff. So I think it's better when you're a little bit more of an expert.
Got it. The last hot topic.
Very hot topic.
Very hot topic. So recently, I think the Penn residents unionized. I don't know if Mass General Brigham,
they did as well.
They also unionized. What is your kind of opinion? You can take it in whatever direction you want. Your opinion of resident unions.
I just want what's best for you. So if union, no union, as long as it's what's best for you, that's what I want for you.
Perfect.
Fair.
Fair.
So I guess pivoting a little bit more. So one thing that we've been talking about, reflecting on our R1 year, is the resources we use to study, and definitely it changed on different rotations, and then reflecting and being like, what would we have done differently? So it's been a little bit of time since you were in residency, but I think
1980. You weren't even born.
I definitely wasn't. Parents were not married. And
you weren't even a twinkle in their eye.
Nothing.
No.
So looking back, how did you study? And now, since all these new resources have come out, how do you think would have been the most optimal way to study going forward?
Yeah, so I read textbooks over and over again. So when you read everything, like what doesn't work, well, rereading and highlighting. Well, I was the queen of rereading and highlighting. So I would read something and I would underline it, and then the next time I read it, I would the things I yellowed, I'd titrate it down even smaller and put that as scribbles in the margins, and then I would go back and do the scribbles and things. So I think certainly what I would do now is I would definitely do the scaffolding. I think I do that now when I'm reading articles. I think that's really helpful to remember things. And I would probably be more active self-quizzing and take my notes. I'm a note taker, but I would take my notes in a different way, where I would have, as opposed to having acute subdural here and all the stuff here, I'd have over here, what are the characteristics of a subdural, and have it folded on this side, or flashcards, so I think doing things like that would be what I would do now.
Got it. And then could you expand on scaffolding and how you use it when you're studying now?
So if I'm reading an article, I will look, or chapter in a book, which I still do, is look at all the big headings first, look at the photos, or the pictures, the captions, and go through what are the big headings and what are the images, and then that is something I will go back and then I read it, and I have something to actually hang the information on, because I've already created the scaffolding.
I think that's also what we've been talking about, some of our videos, is because when you start a rotation, you actually don't have no idea what studies you'll be reading. And like even things that, chest, you don't know, am I reading all the CTAs of the chest? Well, some of them go to CVI, CT pulmonary embolism studies are coming to you. And even that, I think from a high level scaffolding is, at least looking back, would have been helpful. So I think, like you said, it could be done while reading traditional articles or books, but also in the reading room as well.
So we're almost at the end of our interview. We want to conclude by asking you two questions. both related to Penn Radiology. So the first question is, when someone interviews at Penn, why should medical students choose or rank Penn Radiology?
I think because of the culture we've established, I think that's the most important thing. Like, I'm not blowing smoke up anybody's anything when I say, you want to be in a program where your fellow resident is going to celebrate your accomplishments, and you want to be in a program when the shit hits the fan and you're down, somebody's going to carry you. And that to me is crucial. You don't have to be best buds, but you got to help each other out, and you have to be happy when somebody else is succeeding, and you have to step in when somebody else has fallen down.
I think I can support some of your statements. So I think helping out. The good examples are we have the backup call system, and it's never frowned upon. It can be common to kind of call back up at the beginning of call, kind of when we start taking night load, and this is something that is never frowned upon. Similarly, when we have lots of folks going on different conferences, folks going on vacations. Sometimes we get pulled to different rotations. Sometimes I'm a little disappointed I won't work with a certain faculty member, but again, this is something that is kind of generally accepted as part of the culture, something that allows us to have such freedom in terms of taking vacation, going to conferences.
And that's so important to be back up and not be branded a wuss or whatever,
right.
Or you're not. It is so important that backup is no one is like, you're not shirking your duty. It's okay to call. It's okay to ask for help, and it's huge.
Yeah, and I think that being part of a culture is very, very important. It's not like a one-off thing that that happens and someone's frustrated. Again, it's well accepted that beginning residents taking night float may need help, and once we are senior residents, we will sort of return the favor as well. Moving on, we just started a brand new R1 class. What advice would you have for them starting radiology residency?
Well, my advice was always read, but now it's read, watch. So, no, I mean, yeah, you have to work hard. No matter how you're doing it, you have to work hard. And there's so much to learn that you have to spend the hours in. I would also say, please, God, don't start doing flashcards of crack the core as an R1. Because you need foundational stuff, be it from your series of videos, your series of YouTube, whatever. You need a breadth of information, and you can't, it makes me crazy just to start studying factoids.
Yeah, and...
So have you started to make
flashcards? Oh, I'm not a flashcard learner.
Okay.
I did make flashcards from case stacks, actually.
But that's okay. That's just saying, like that's strictly studying for that core exam. Is to start as an R1 and start doing that bank of 7,000 flashcards for crack the core. No. Sorry.
No, I mean, I love flashcards, but I make my own. But I make it from core radiology, which I think again it just. After I've done my reading and watching videos and stuff, and like you said, I have that foundation of where that information's fitting, then it's for me, rather than having to reread something, I can just reference those flashcards, and it gets me in a testing mode with that information. So I think it helps me. But again, it's not crack the core radiology, which I think
right.
Two very different things.
Very different things. Very different things. So you'll have to help me because I got that app. Because
is it Anki?
Yeah.
Oh, the flashcard app?
The flashcard app, right? And then because the chief residents did that and made flashcards out of the new residents, right? Because I just memorized everybody's name and stuff by looking at the pictures and drawing a map and doing this, and I wanted to add to what they did because they just had name and where they came from, but I wanted to add interesting facts and things like that. So I was trying to edit them, and I didn't do so well. So you're going to teach me.
Sure. I actually don't use Anki. I use Quizlet. I don't know if you've ever used it.
I can buy that one too.
You don't have to buy it. A kindergartner can use it.
Good. Well, that would be me.
I like it a lot.
All right.
So it's a lot simpler than Anki.
Okay.
Last question. In 4 years, 3 years? In 3 years, 4 years for some people, will all graduate residency and be very, very successful radiologists, hopefully. What advice would you have for us then?
what advice is that you're a lifelong learner, all right? And do not worry if you don't know everything. I've had some senior residents go, well, I didn't study this, or I didn't do a concentration in this, and how am I going to do this out in practice? No, you will be able to do it. You have to learn stuff as your job morphs. You have to learn how to do stuff. You know how to learn, and you have to be willing to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the questions I think in some rotation we're grappling with, what new modality will come out in the future.
Oh, yeah.
And then, by then, we'll all be practicing radiologists. It's something that we have to learn. Otherwise, we probably won't have jobs, right? Mm-hmm. And how quickly things change and keep changing in the radiology landscape.
I had to teach myself. When I first started, a CT brain had maybe 8 slices.
Oh, wow.
Okay. I had to teach myself MR. I had to teach myself PET CT. And I wasn't, this is what you'll need to do.
Yeah,
and you have to be prepared if if someone wants you to read an MRE and you haven't done an MSK stuff, you just read about it. You can learn it. You can figure it out.
Yeah, absolutely.
A can-do attitude.
And I think, but it's also very important, I feel like, to have a very wide breadth of pathologies available, which Penn certainly offers. I think talking to some of the fellows who may not have gone to programs that have such a large catchment areas. Yes, sometimes you open up any imaging study and have no idea what's going on, but I look at those as learning opportunities. And other times you don't know what you don't know, right? And so some of the fellows who have graduated have told me they have never seen some of this stuff in their residency program. And I think in some ways we all feel blessed to be here where we see an extremely broad array of pathologies.
Yeah. I would still like us to see, I think one of the things as you're working on your curriculum and APDR is working on it, I think there should be a list of diagnoses of things that an R1 should see in each one of the areas, right, to make sure. And we can put them in a teaching file, put them in, any type of forum that you could go through. But I think there should be there should be a consistency that you've seen a certain thing of key diagnoses for each block of each year.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe we, as Penn Radiology, we can make strides in that. That'll be the mark we leave. The Penn Radiology leaves. Yeah. How else can we make you proud, Mary?
Oh, you already are. Look. You already are. You guys are the best.
Perfect. Well, that's the end of our interview.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to lead off season 2.
Yeah. No, absolutely. This was a pleasure to have you here, to learn so much from you, and we'll continue learning a lot from you. But it was great to kind of sit down, have a one-on-one conversation, learn about our fun attributes.
All right. Well, what you should tell the audience, what is the rest of season 2 going to look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So the focus for season 2 is going to be education. So season 1, a lot of our co-residents, graced us with coming on the podcast. Season 2, we want to talk with experienced educators like yourself. Eventually, and hopefully, Scott, you're listening to this, you're probably going to be the next person we ask, just because your YouTube videos have 100,000 views, and we love them. But also, being an assistant program director and giving extraordinary lectures for us as residents as well. So I think a lot of that for us to also understand what makes a extraordinary educator, and then also to figure out how we want to continue learning.
All right, it's going to be a great season.
I'm excited.
We're excited.
Very excited.
We are very, very excited. Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you,
All
Mary.
right, over and out.
Over and out indeed.